Hi guys, it's the Educator here. Welcome back to my channel. Alright, so in this video we're going to be looking at GST112 revision questions. Alright, this video we are going to be looking at GST112 revision questions. These are questions that you will likely come across in your examination. Alright, these are real examination questions. So if you're lucky, you might come across 5 questions, 10 questions, 2 questions, just depending on how lucky you are going to be on the day of your exam. Alright, so please do to take this very seriously. Alright, so if this is your first time turning into my channel, I make revision videos to help 100 level students in Delta State University, Abraka. Please, if you have not subscribed, do well to hit the subscription button so that when I drop videos, subsequent videos that will help you throughout your examination, you are not going to miss out. Alright, let's dive into what we have. Science is coined from the Latin word A, scientia, sanere, science, sciences, C, scientio, D, scientifica. Alright, so the correct answer is option A. Now, what I did was to put the two that you might possibly come across on the day of your exam. So they will either tell you it is scientia or sciery. Okay, these two, you should take note of these two. Alright, so let's move on. Question 2. Historiography of science studies the method by which the correct answer is by which historians study the history of science. That's option A. Alright, so for the third question, we have the modern neuroscience could be ascribed to. The correct answer is Edwin Smith's papyrus. So when we talk about modern neuroscience, Edwin Smith's papyrus is what should come to mind. Okay, so moving on. Question 4. The Mesopotamian people of Sumer are now known as inhabitants of modern day Iraq. Okay, so initially they were known as the Mesopotamian people of Sumer, but now Iraq. Okay. Alright, so moving on. According to the history of science, which book is considered the most influential textbook ever written? Alright, so the most influential textbook ever written is the Elements. Elements is considered the most influential book ever written in the history of science. The system of traditional medicine known as Ayurveda is originated in. Now, GST112, I find it so interesting, well, because I'm a science student, and I also believe that science students will do so well in GST112 because, of course, most of the things we'll be talking about in GST112, they are very relatable, okay, apart from the histories. Alright, those who are good in history will know that. Alright, so for question 6, the answer is option P, ancient Indian before 2500 BC. Right? The term algebra is derived from the word aljab. That's where the word is derived from, aljab. Alright, question 8. The end of the Islamic Golden Age is marked by the destruction of the intellectual center in Baghdad. Please, you should take note of the spelling of this Baghdad. It is B-A-G, normal bag, then D-A-D. So you have Baghdad. Alright, question 9. Who was the first to realize the importance of empirical measurements in physics? Alright, in physics, of course, Socrates. When you hear Socrates, I don't think Socrates has anything to do with physics. So of course, we are removing Socrates from the option. Then we have Isaac Newton. Of course, we can say Isaac Newton is related to physics. Aristotle, well, we'll exclude him. So we have Isaac Newton and we have Galileo Galilei. So the correct answer to this question is Galileo Galilei, which is option B. Galileo Galilei was the first to realize the importance of empirical measurements in physics. The Book of Optics was written by Karl Popper. That's option C. Okay, let's take it option by option. Option A, we have Ibrahim Mustafa. Option B, we have Ibrahim R. Haytham. Then C, we have Karl Popper. Then D, we have Al-Khawarizmi. See all these names here, they are very scary. Now, Karl Popper is not for the Book of Optics. Please take note. The Book of Optics was written by Ibrahim or Haytham. Please take note of that. We will soon get to the question that has Karl Popper as the answer. But all the same, please take note of all these questions. Alright, so the next question. Who introduced controlled experimentation in early chemistry during the Islamic Golden Age? Who introduced it? The person who introduced it was Jabril Ibrahim Hayyan, also known as Abu Jabril. So I put this Abu Jabril in brackets so that in case that day you don't see the Jabril Ibrahim Hayyan, you will see this Abu Jabril. Okay. The logic of scientific discovery, of course, I've come to this guy now. The logic of scientific discovery was written by Karl Popper. So Karl Popper was the one that wrote this one. Okay, that is option A. All right, so moving on, what is defined as a systematic way of acquiring knowledge? Of course, this is now very relatable. I know what I've been doing since is just looking, might be looking strange, but if you have been reading very well and you are almost prepared for your examination, it shouldn't be so strange for you. All right, so systematic way of acquiring knowledge is, of course, science. Okay, so let's move on. 14. Which branch of philosophy validates knowledge? Of course, it is your epistemology. Epistemology validates knowledge. Epistemology. What does ICT stand for? Wow, this is a big bonus question. Option C. Please take notes. Information communication technology. Option C. 16. Adopting appropriate technology leads directly to dash. It leads directly to higher productivity. When you adopt when you adopt appropriate technology, it leads to higher productivity. The real foundation of technological innovation is dash. The real foundation of technological innovation is dash. It is human knowledge. Of course, human beings were the one that had this knowledge to do a lot of things as regards technology. They brought out this innovation. So the foundation was from human knowledge. All right. Moving on, what is the secret behind the hierarchy of development? That's development, villages, towns, and cities. What is the secret? Okay, the secret is the advancement of technology and science. So what makes this? Why do we have village? Why do we have town? Why do we have cities? It's because of technology. Some have technology, some don't have technology, and so there's this classification, there's this hierarchy. Okay, advancement of science and technology. All right, number 19. Energy is measured in, of course, we're coming to something that is relatable to almost all science students, if not all. So we have joules. Of course, energy is measured in joules. What are the two basic forms of energy? Another relatable question: potential and kinetic energy. If you're not a science student, please take note of all these things. I know science students will answer these questions without reading GST112. They are basic science questions. Okay, energy possessed by body due to its position above the ground is called position above the ground. Energy possessed by an object due to its position above the ground is known as potential energy. Please take notes. When they are defining any energy and you don't see motion in the energy, please, it is potential energy. We already established that there are two types of energy, potential and kinetic. One has to do with motion, right? If they are defining another thing that you are a little bit confused, but there's no motion, just know that it is potential energy. All right. 22. Energy possessed by a body by reason of its motion. We have come to the question now. This is known as kinetic energy, right? Kinetic energy. 23. Which type of energy source has a limited supply and cannot be replaced once used up? Limited supply, of course, non-renewable energy. They cannot, once they are used up, that's the end. They can't be renewed, they can't be regenerated, they can't be charged again. But renewable, they have unlimited, because once they go down, you can get them again. It can be recharged, it can be restored. Right? So wind energy is an example of dash. Wind. Have you ever had any case where there's something like wind has finished? No. So wind is an example of renewable energy. If wind finish, something that is, for example, if you have something that wind is powering, if that thing stop today, we're not going to be afraid that hey, there's no longer wind on earth. So it's not possible, because wind is something that it continues. All right, it can be renewed. So moving on, provision of electricity using waterfalls through a dam is referred to as hydroelectric power. Okay, when they use water to produce electricity, hydroelectric. From the word hydro, water, electric, electricity. All right. The word pollution is derived from the Latin word politinium. Politinium. All right. Option A. All right. So let's move on. 27. Substances that cause pollution to the environment are known as pollutants. They are known as pollutants. The smallest indivisible part of an element is the, right, so coming to questions that are very, very relatable to science students, is the atom. Okay. 29. Carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide are classified as air pollutants. Of course, they are air pollutants. All right. So moving on, ozone, O3, is an allotrope of oxygen. All right. This is very, very, very relatable. Oxygen.